I'm making supper. And tonight I've got a roast pork in the oven, which smells wonderful. And I'm going to make some homemade noodles. So in here, I've put 4 cups of all purpose flour and 1 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to mix that all together. It's always important to mix your dry ingredients together like this. Of course, if you have a machine, that's great. I don't. Probably Nicole. Oh, she does. Look at that. Over there on the counter sits a KitchenAid. I'm doing it this way. So anyway, in this one, I'm going to put 4 eggs. And I forgot one thing. Hold on a minute. Okay, I put the 4 eggs in here and I whip them up. And then what I'm going to do, and this is my mother's recipe, I'm going to take half of that eggshell and I'm going to put 4 halves, see how I fill that up, of milk, 4 of them. So that's 2, 3, and 4. And just whip that in there like that, lightly. And I guess I better get a fork out here. Still getting used to the kitchen. Slowly and surely I will. And I'm just going to dump that into the flour and salt. And that's all it is. Well, kind of. Now you have to work it in slowly. Just work it in as if you're making a bannock, I guess. You know that my mother was such a good cook. That's one of her gifts that she had. And she had the gift of hospitality as well. I've told you before that Mom was in a residential school, and she would reference it once in a while in saying that she worked in the kitchen. And she talked more about how they were taught to set a table, a proper table, she used to say. You know, with all the cutlery and stuff. See, now I've switched over to my hands. But you know, in the time that she worked in the kitchen there, she never ever shared any recipes. Not once did she say, I learned how to make this at the residential school. Nothing like that. It was more like ironing, setting the table, folding the tea towels. Back then they used to iron them, sprinkle them with water and iron them. Sure don't do that anymore, do we? Now we have dryers that you press. I don't have one, and it just puts moisture in your clothing and basically irons your clothes for you right in the dryer. So anyway, I'm going to work this in, and you just have to work it in slowly, and you're going to work most of that flour in. So I have quite a bit to work in yet. So I'm going to work this in and I'll time it, and I'll come back and I'll tell you how long it took me. You know, it took me a good 15 minutes to get this dough, and I was struggling. And the one thing that I learned from my mother that was a good lesson, when you're making dough, don't struggle with it. If your dough is struggling, add some more. So I added a little bit more milk, and I ended up adding another egg and I would say a good 1/4 cup of milk. And because it just was not going to come together. But now, look, it's a nice soft dough. So it's ready. So I'm just going to let this rest. I'm going to cover it up with plastic wrap, and I'm going to put it in the fridge. And then when I'm ready to roll it out and cook it, I'll be back. Okay, I've taken it out of the fridge, And on a lightly floured counter, I'm rolling it out. Took me a while to find the rolling pin, but I found it. I found it. So I'm rolling this out, and I'm rolling it out nice and thin. Now this is about 1/3 of that dough that I made. So I'll roll this out nice and thin, and I'll be right back. Okay, I rolled it out nice and thin. I could probably roll it out even thinner, but you see I've got a nice piece of dough like this. And I have to use the cutting board because I don't want you cutting there on their counter. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll this dough up sort of like this. And I'm going to start cutting very thin strips of this. Homemade noodles. Homemade noodles. I don't know. You know, Mom worked for a lot of farm women. When she left residential school, she worked in town for a lot of people. A lot of good, kind people, too. They shared a lot of recipes with her. And when she talked about, like when she made pies, she would reference who taught her. She always gave credit to the cooks where she learned from and the community where she learned from. So I don't know where she picked this up, but we grew up with it. It was always a lot of times on Sunday. You see it nice, makes nice. So that's what I'll do. And then you just boil it. You put water, salted water on the stove, bring it to a good rapid boil, and you drop your noodles in and you let them cook until they're tender. Not too long, otherwise they'll start falling apart. So you just cook them almost like a pierogi or a pasta. You know, it starts floating. Make sure it's cooked. Maybe take one out and taste it and see how it tastes, and then drain them. But I'll be doing that. But I'm going to cut this up, and then I'll come back when I'm cooking the noodles. Okay, be patient with me. Okay, see, I've got the noodles in here. They're cooking nicely. They've already come to a boil. I tasted one. And then I had some, you can't really see that. Good, let's go like this. Okay, so the noodles are in there. And I'm going to see how long they are. Grandma Sherry got a bit lazy. Oh, look at that. Hold on, guess what I found? An eggshell. Grandma wasn't watching. Okay, so I'm going to put the noodles into here, and then in this water yet, I still have one more batch of noodles. So I'm going to put those in here, so you'll see me doing that. Oh, is that one caught? Okay. So here's the noodles, and you kind of want to try and break them apart as best as you can as you're putting them in there. You can put a bit of flour, but I don't like to put a lot of flour because it just turns everything so starchy. And let those come to a boil. In the meantime, in this pot, I'm going to put a pat of butter. Oh, did you see that? How much I put in there? Not much, just enough to make it. And I did put a bit of olive oil in there just to, so it wouldn't boil over. Someone on here told me about that. Okay, so now the other thing I'm going to put on here is just a little bit of black pepper. I like black pepper on mine. And I'll just mix that in.